Okay, so any chainsaw is going to have your oil up front by your bar and your gas in the back. I'm sure there's a model that's different, but for 99% of the saws, this is where it's going to be. So if you can actually take this right off. So this is our gas tank. If you get usually a pair of vice grips work, or long needle nose pliers, you can usually get in there. Let's see, a pick maybe. Let's use a pick. Yeah, the pick will do. So fish this out here. Boom. As you can see, this is our old fuel filter, and there's a little ring there. Usually you can just kind of spin these right off. So take that one off. Make sure you guys are still in camera here. Hold on to this. Grab the new one. You should be able to, yeah, you can just you don't usually have to move those circlips, but that's it. Pop the old one off, put the new one in, drop it back in, all done. We're actually in my basement, so we're gonna put this in a jar because of the fumes. So we just put that right in a jar because of the fumes, and we're gonna put this back in. Check this O-ring too. Make sure there's no tears, no rips in it. Actually, we can clean that while we're here. Just take a rag and kind of wipe this off. Dirt and stuff, you may be able to get in there with a small pick, real gentle, and clean that grime out. You don't want to obviously nick the seal. It's a pretty fat O-ring though, so just kind of clean that up. Maybe put a dab of oil on it. Wouldn't hurt. And then just put it back in. All right. Nice and happy. The thing that often gets overlooked on your chainsaws is your pull cord. So actually, all this stuff, all this buildup, sawdust and stuff builds up in here, and there's actually a fan in here that helps cool your motor. So we're actually going to pop this cover off real carefully, and we're going to clean out all this stuff because this is almost totally obstructed. Okay, we got the 4 screws off. We took the handle off, like I said, so we're gonna slowly take this off. Okay. So as you can see here, just a lot of grime, a lot of dirt buildup, a lot of oil. You know, sometimes if you overflow this, oil's got to go somewhere, and then all the dirt sticks to it. So I'm not going to show you how I clean it. Just clean it off, wipe it down, clean off all these fins. This fan actually helps cool the motor, so you want to make sure this is all clean. So we're going to clean this all up, and then so stick around. Another good maintenance point, if you could see right here, this is your contact point. This is your coil that goes up to your spark plug. This is in charge of your spark. So you want to make sure that that contact, it's tough to see, but that contact in here is clean. So what you can do is put the contact actually between the fins here, and you can get in there with a little brush, a little rag. You want to make sure it's clean, because as it comes in contact, this is your sparking point. That little it's tough to see, but this little, it's like a shiny part of your magneto. So as soon as this comes around, boom, that's where your spark is. Obviously your timing is all set, but you want to make sure that contact point in there is nice and clean. While you're under here, you might as well. So as you can see, we got that fan all cleaned, we got that contact point cleaned. I don't spray brake clean inside this section. I do electronic cleaner. That seems to work out pretty good. Brake clean is pretty hazardous, but cleaned up all the underneath cowlings. Where's my cover? We're gonna go blow the cover off by the compressor, but once we do that, it should look pretty good. You just want to inspect wires, make sure nothing's frayed, that contact point is clean, this fan and all the crap around it. If you overflow your oil, it's going to go in here, and like you saw, I've done it before, we're all victims of it, but it just gels everything up and it kind of gets nasty. So just be careful when you're putting oil in your chainsaw, because it's less time you have to spend under here cleaning. Continuing right along, now you want to check the health of your pull cord rope. So what you do is you just kind of wind it all the way out, kind of put your thumb in there. You can put some type of screwdriver in there or something, but you just want to check the cord for frays, nicks, any weak spots. It's good to carry some extra pull cord on you when you're out in the field. I got some in my chainsaw box, but that's all you want to do. If it all looks good, just let it go back in. We're going to slap this cover on. We're going to put this cover back on, so this is all cleaned, pull cords inspected, so we're going to put it all back together, and then we're going to move on to the bar and chain. Alright, so we got the cover back on, we got the handle back on. You just want to, obviously with the kill switch off, you just want to make sure, alright, you want to make sure that the mechanism is grabbing the motor. I'd hate to go through all this trouble, get outside and go to pull it, and there's nothing going on. So there's an adjustment screw for the oiler down here for lower to higher flow rate. So you just want to check your factory owner's manual and set it. I have mine, I believe, in the middle. Seems to be working fine. But as far as oil repair and maintenance, we're not going to get into that because I don't need to, and that's a little bit more invasive. So let's move on to the exhaust. So the exhaust on most saws, a lot of newer saws, are heavily restricted. This Echo, you can do a muffler mod. I haven't. I'm not a fan of, really screwing with things. I'm sure it'll open it up. I did open these 3 little holes a little bit, but under there, on most saws, there'll be a screen, kind of like a spark arrestor on a, like a muffler. Cause like a muffler you'd find like an ATV or whatever. Same idea. There's a screen in there that helps with sparks. So what you do is you pop these 2 screws off and clean that screen and clean out any buildup. I run my saw a little bit fat on oil as far as mixture. Some guys run it thin to get the high RPMs, but I run mine a little bit fat. So every so often, like, I will clean this screen and wash out and clean the muffler, get it flowing good. So that's just my tip on exhaust maintenance. You don't have to do that every tank of gas, but probably every, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 tanks, give it a check. Okay, so we got the air cleaner done, spark plug done, the exhaust cleaned out, the pole starter cover cleaned out, the magneto cleaned and inspected. Now we're going to move on to the side cover and bar. So obviously any chainsaw is going to be very, very similar. There's either 1 or 2 bar nuts on the side here. Give these a loosen. I always back this off a couple turns and then just spin these off, put them in your, I recommend getting a metal tray. Very handy. I have a stainless steel table, so it works out good for me. Even if you have a wood table, bolts and everything will still stick to it. So take the couple bar nuts off, pull this cover off. So now you're gonna always have a ton of buildup around here, all up in here. When you're cutting, this is where the wood is actually going to flow and exit out the back here. So you want to clean this up. The more gummed up this is, the less efficient the saw is gonna get the saw chips out, and you're just gonna have buildup. So clean all this, clean the threads in the adjuster here. So we're gonna do that, and then we'll get to this. Okay, so that's all clean, takes care of that. Just, you get all the crap out of there, give it a quick wipe down. Now moving forward to the saw. So this area here is your drive gear that drives your chain, in here you have your bar oiler. So of course this area is going to get full of just oil and sawdust and just crap. So as far as routine maintenance, you want to take the bar and chain off, which is what we're going to do in a second, and then we're going to clean all up in here. So very simple. Push the bar back, pop the chain off, just like your bicycle. Nothing simple. And then just pop the bar off. And in here, do you see how all that crap is built up? You want to get all that stuff out. Your bar oiler on this model is actually on top here. I don't know if you could see, there's a little hole in the back there, and it corresponds to if you look at your bar. If I wipe the schmeg off, see right here, you'll see better when I clean it up, but this is your oiler. So when the bar, this is your oil hole. So when the bar is on the chainsaw, the oil flows up into this top groove and the chain carries it around to lubricate. Very basic, very simple. So let's clean this. So the way I clean this, you want to go, there's a drive sprocket at the end of your chainsaw bar here. Every chainsaw bar is going to have some type of sprocket at the end. If you're using compressed air, you want to blow from the nose back. You don't want to blow all the stuff that builds up in the groove in here. So I don't have my compressor in here. I just use some rubbing alcohol on a brush, and I get the brush down in the groove, and I get all that stuff out. So let's go do that. Stand by, and I'll be right back. Okay, so once you get this all cleaned up, you want to pay attention to in here. This is your oiler. You want to make sure there's no dirt or anything packed in there. The next thing you want to check is this drive gear right here. This is a wear part. You want to be, there's part number 325-7 Oregon. This is a wear part. You want to buy one, replace it when it becomes worn. This one still has some life in it, so we're going to keep it. To remove this, if you put a socket on there and turn it over, you're going to turn the motor over. So what you want to do is you want to put your engine brake on, and then this most likely is going to be reverse thread, I believe. Don't quote me on that. Check service manual, check a form or something, but the drive spins this way. So I would imagine this nut would be reverse thread. That's how my McCulloch is. So this is another thing you want to take off and check for wear, because they will wear over time. But once this is all cleaned up, we can go ahead and put the bar back on. So of course we got our bar all cleaned up, nice clean groove, nothing packed in there, no remnants. One thing you want to do is check for burrs on the side of your bar. Every so often, the more you use your chainsaw, you will get a burr will start to develop. So I'm going to show you how to get rid of that super quick. So if you feel a burr or an edge on your saw, you could just literally take a file. You just want to take a file. You hear that right there? There's a burr there. You can hear the tone difference. Keep it relatively flat. You don't want to be holding it up at an angle, but you just want to knock that edge off. I mean, this is just for demonstration purposes. I'm gonna shut the camera off and do it correct, but you just want to hold the file flat like that. You just want to knock that edge off both sides, so 4 times. So top, bottom, top, bottom. So you just want to knock that edge off just like I showed you. So once the edges are all knocked off, you don't feel the burr anymore, we can go ahead and put this bar back on. Okay, so moving right along here, we got our chainsaw bar cleaned, filed, our tip is greased. You want to make sure you take a picture of your saw before you start working on it to remember which way the bar went, so you don't screw that up. I've done it before. I actually forgot now. I'll have to go back and watch footage, but I'm gonna go ahead and say it was this way. I'm pretty sure it was upside down, Now we're gonna put it echo facing up. Okay, so putting your chain back on, put your bar on, push it all the way down. Make sure you put your chain on the correct way. It should always be your depth gauge first and then your cutter, if you remember it that way. If you put it on and it looks something like this, when you have your cutter and then your depth gauge, you're doing it wrong. It's not going to cut at all unless your saw runs backwards. So remember, raker, cutter, raker, cutter. Say it with me, raker, cutter. Just kidding. Okay, so I like to start with the sprocket in the rear. Get it on the groove there. And then you could always, once it's on, it's tough to get in a full shot, but once it's on, just kind of pull it a little bit. Make sure the chain goes in the groove on the bottom. Then that takes care of this. It's on the sprocket. It's on our bar. We are good to put our cover on. Generally, when you go to put your cover back on, turn your adjuster back a few turns. This little plastic piece right there, that goes in the groove of this bar. So you can get a good idea when you line this up if it's going to fit or not. You'll know it only goes on one way, so you can't really deviate from that. Back this down a little bit. Hey, voila, nice and flush. Now let's put our bar nuts back on. Okay, so you get your bar nuts back on just snug. Now we want to tighten the chain. Now it's up for debate. Some guys run their saws loose. Some guys run, some people run their chainsaw bars tight. Some run it loose. It's kind of preference, but let me show you what I do. So give it a couple, tighten these up a little bit more. And there's a bunch of videos online of how to do this and whatnot. I just figured I'd throw it in here. So turn your adjuster to the right will be tighten. Now if you see here, as I tighten this, that chain's gonna come up. There's one thing you wanna pay attention to. You can either lift the bar, see how the bar has some play, or you can lift the power head. Basically, watch the chain. If I lift the power head, the chain loosens up. Or if I rest the power head on the ground and I lift the bar up, you're doing the same thing. So whatever's comfortable for you. What I like to do is I like to leave the power head on the table. If you have a really long bar though, it might be easier just to lift the power head. So lift the bar up, turn it so that bottom chain sucks in. I like to tighten these a little bit. So new chains will stretch. So go a couple turns with it. Just make sure nothing's hung up, nothing's binding. So that's a little bit loose. We can give it one more quick turn. Tighten her up. I'm cool with that. One last trick I do. Here's my scrunch. It's on a piece of paracord. When I know my saw is in good shape, ready to run, doesn't need maintenance, I put my scrunch around my handlebar, around the wrap. If my saw needs maintenance, or if I hit a rock or something like that, I wrap my scrunch around the trigger. So I know when I grab my saw, if my scrunch is here, it needs service. But if my scrunch is here, I know it's ready to cut. So we just went through the whole saw. So I'm gonna put my scrunch on here. So that way I know if I put this out in the shed and I don't cut wood for, let's say, a month or whatever, I know when I go out there, okay, my wrench is here, it's ready to go. Just a simple trick I do, makes it easier. You don't have to do that, but if it helps, go ahead and do it. One last thing I'm doing, now that the saw is done, I'm gonna do a maintenance log. This just helps me if I don't cut for a month or two. Okay, oh, I know, on the 15th of last month, I overhauled the saw. Got a lot of equipment on the Homestead, just trying to keep a log of everything. So this will be my Echo maintenance log. If I come back out here, I can do like a check. If I put a new plug in, let's say I foul a plug, I can do new plug, you know, 6, 16, 19. So just a good tip to have. Maybe you don't feel like you have to do it, but I like to write things down so I know I can reference it. So that's the last thing I want to show you guys. So I appreciate you guys watching. Thanks for subscribing if you have. If you haven't, please do. And we'll see you on the next video.